Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be showcasing 5 tournament winning decks. Some of these won big events, some of these won small events. Some of them are more normal, but none are super meta, I guess you could say. But yeah, and all the links will be down below in the description for the list. If I forgot one, just tell me. I think I have all of them. I mean, obviously, as I'm recording this, I don't because I haven't made the video, but after, I should have them. Anyway, let's just hop into things with a Dialga VSTAR list with the Metang. I'm sure some of you have seen this list floating around, or this deck, and you have Origin Form Dialga VSTAR. I was gonna make a video on it. I think I didn't, because I think I like played a bunch of games and I kept getting like donked or something. But anyway, the deck's actually pretty good. Use Dialga VSTAR and its attack just lets you take an extra turn, which is really good. Then you have the new Metang with Metal Maker, letting you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, attach any number of basic metal energy you find there to your Pokemon in any way you like, shuffle the other cards and put them on the bottom of your deck. The deck is a little bit luck dependent because obviously you can miss the energy with Metal Maker, but if you have a bunch of Metangs, 2 to 3 in play, then you should be getting energy into play pretty consistently. And you have 18 metal energy, which is a lot, but then you can take advantage of that by using Radiant Greninja to discard them and draw some cards. We also have Vesuvian Basculin, Gather the Crew for free. Apparently, this is the logo Limitless uses for a free attack. It lets you search for 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench and shuffle your deck, which is really nice because you can turn one, go second, retreat into it, and then have lots of Pokemon in play. Then you evolve into the Vesuvian Basculegion, which is a really good card, assuming that you are attacking with the first deck. The second deck isn't actually that bad. I never realized it, but the first deck is very good. Upstream Spirits for free again. It does 20 for each basic energy card in your discard pile, then you shuffle all those back into your deck, and you can re-accelerate them with Metang, which is really useful and can do massive damage. If you have all your energy in the discard somehow, you're hitting 360 damage, which is quite a lot. And obviously, you probably won't be doing that, but you can certainly hit pretty decent damage and recover energy. Outside that, we do see Squilvert plus Mew EX as the engine. We see this funny little sand shrew. It's a it's a counter to trainer cards. It's a Pokemon with an ability. It says Sand Screen, and trainer cards in your opponent's discard pile can't be put into their deck by an effect of your opponent's item or supporter cards. This is really interesting. It's kind of weird. It stops Palpad. I'm not entirely sure of the use of this, the main use case of this. This does stop Control as well. It stops Team Yell's Cheer and Silene, not completely, but some. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's kind of weird. This does not stop Pokestop because Pokestop's a stadium, not a supporter or item. This doesn't stop Superior Energy Retrieval because energy cards are energy cards, not trainer cards, and just going into your hand, not your deck, and all sorts of different things. But it's still pretty interesting. Oh, Pokestop goes to your hand as well. But yeah, it stops a few little things. It's a nice, fun, weird tech, but a pretty cool one. We do see Area as well, and this will cause your opponent to reveal their hand, and you discard up to 2 item cards you find there, which is pretty interesting, as it's obviously annoying for some decks to have to deal with, and I actually think that this is the best use case of Airy, because Airy is a disruptive supporter, but also if your opponent is expecting to be playing against a deck like Control or potentially Mill or potentially Stall, but more likely Control, then they will probably just play their items because they want to get them into play. They don't want to get them airied, but if you have the option to airy or the option to use all these other setup supporters, and that's really interesting. And the really crazy thing is 4 copies of Professor Terra scenario. What? This is weird. It allows you to scoop up a Pokemon from play into your hand. You can use this to heal your Origin Form Dialga V-Stars. You can use this to potentially reuse Metang. You take one Metang, scoop it up, and play it onto another Beldum, and then you can use it again. This has a lot of use cases. It's really weird in my opinion, but really fun. In this list, well, Dialga V-Star isn't a super rogue deck. I wouldn't personally call it a rogue deck at all. Although I could see the argument. The inclusion of some of the different cards here is really interesting. Additionally, Professor Terra's scenario, as I said, it lets you reuse Metal Maker, the ability on Metang, and lets you reuse other abilities like Squovit, EX, Radiant Greninja. Probably not Squovit, as that would be pretty terrible because you'd Squovit, you'd have one card in your hand, and then you'd Professor Terra's scenario, play Squovit, and you wouldn't have any cards in your hand. Then you can't use Nest Dash again because you don't have any cards in your hand. But, wait, can you use it? You might be able to use it. It won't do anything, but you might be able to use it. And then Outside of that, yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. Pretty interesting though. I thought this list looked super interesting, and it was played this was played in a city league, so this was played in Japan, which is the in tournaments the new cards are legal and post rotation has happened, versus in internationally, which is not Japan, it's the U.S. I think it's North America, Latin America. In Mexico is considered part of Latin America, not North America. It's kind of weird. It's Europe, but I'm not sure if it's all of Europe, and also Australia, Oceania. I don't know. Certain parts are those. There are four regions. Then there's also, I think, South Africa and somewhere in the Middle East, but I forget where. I don't think everywhere. It's a very strange set of countries. And then there's Japan, and then there's a bunch of other ones. So TPCI, which is the Pokemon Company International, with US and probably wherever you, the viewer, are watching from, not necessarily, but many places. And then Japan is separate, which is TPC. So if someone says the Pokemon Company, that's referring to Japan. And then also there are other areas and other like regions that have their different branch of Pokemon, and there are some places that don't have any, which is very not fun. Or as far as I'm aware, there are places that don't have any access to Pokemon cards, which is not fun. But something like the Pokemon video game and stuff like that is produced by the Pokemon Company, who then distributes it all over. It's kind of weird. It's actually very complicated. But anyway, what I'm saying is that in Japan, these cards are legal for tournament play, versus in the US for regular in-person tournament play. Not regular play. In regular play, they are legal, but in tournament play in the States and wherever, then they are not legal. But keep that in mind. Any list here that was played in like the quote international territory would be an online tournament, versus the Japanese ones could be online, but are probably in person. That was a bit weird and long-winded, but pretty much some of these lists are from in person and some of them are from online. And the links in the description, some are, they're different links. Next up, we have another metal deck, but this one's metal and psychic. Gholdengo EX. You do have psychic energies, so you can recover them with Tulip, which is kind of fun. There is no Frog Crystal, so none of that. But you can use Tulip here. We see Lady, Cryptomaniac's Deciphering Link. You search your deck for any two cards, pop a story on top. You can draw it with Gholdengo, Arena Greninja, or the new Dunsparce. The Dunsparce is really wacky. Runaway, draw. Once on your turn, you may draw 3 cards, and then shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached into your deck. It kind of lets you build a big hand. It acts as a pivot, and the basic also has free retreat. This stage 1 doesn't have free retreat, but you can send it back into your deck if it's in the active, so it can't really get stuck at all, even if Snorlax is there. So that's pretty interesting. And then you do have pretty normal stuff outside of that, but I thought Dunsparce is kind of fun. I've seen Gholdengo Dunsparce a few times on ladder. I'm just playing some games. It's kind of a weird, goofy deck. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I don't think it's that good, honestly, but it's funny. It just does one thing. You just Gholdengo, and I guess you did Dunsparce, but the Dunsparce is just to draw cards. But the main idea is you're just drawing lots of cards and you're hitting big damage with the Gholdengo. It obviously is not very versatile, but it is pretty interesting. The next deck we are going to take a look at, though, there's a lot more to talk about, more interesting text, and it is more versatile. This is another metal and psychic deck, or psychic metal deck, although I guess it's a grass deck with Espathra EX. I actually recently covered this, I think yesterday. It should be, I think yesterday. So you have Dazzling Gaze if it's in the active. Your opponent's active's Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless more, or attacks used by your opponent's active Pokemon. I am not entirely sure the difference. I know there are TMs. Some of the rulings get a little confusing, but anyways, it will increase the TMs as well. And then Sideball does 30 for 1 psychic, but 30 for each, 30 more for damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. So if your opponent has lots of energy in play, this is really good. Obviously, with the disruptive ability, your opponent will have presumably more energy on so that they can actually attack. But what if you're not against that? What if you're against, say Chimpow, which is a really bad matchup for this deck, or other decks? Then you have Scizor, which it does 50, 10, and 15 more for each of your opponent's Pokemon to play with an ability for 1 metal on a stage 1. Very good attacker. And then we see Zadu to draw, Minior as a counter to Snorlax, and Super Effective Glasses, which 1 is a counter to Snorlax, but 2, it is also a counter to Iron Hands EX. It's not amazing. It actually will trade evenly with Iron Hands EX, but it's still interesting. Then we see Klefki as well. If it's in the active, then you can go ahead and ability lock all your opponent's basic Pokemon. I personally prefer Fluttermane over Klefki, but I know some people like it a lot, and it is searchable with Buddy Buddy Poppin', which is useful. Outside of that, trainers are pretty normal. We do see a wide variety of tools as well, or a few different ones, with Rescue Board, which gives you one less retreat or free retreat if you have 30 HP or less, which is very random. I guess it gives your Flittle free retreat, which already has free retreat. And then super effective glasses, as I mentioned, team evolution, because you run evolutions, and a few just different options that I think are really interesting. I wanted to highlight this deck as it mixes two really unique decks. I guess one deck with one versatile Pokemon. We have Espathra EX, Zadu, plus the Scizor, and so you have two different concepts that combine together to do really interesting things. And this one, again, won a City League, a Japanese tournament, which did have 64 people. I believe pretty much all City Leagues have 64. It could be less, but it's around there. Next up, our last Psychic deck, I think. And this one is, again, really interesting. Well, maybe it's not super interesting, but it's Gardevoir. You have Gardevoir EX, you have Gallade as well, and you have the two Professor Terracinaires. Then you have Tulip and Espathra. Espathra, this is the single prize Espathra now, which has its attack, Glittering Eyes, and this is actually a list that's been played more commonly, but I think a lot of people aren't as aware of it. Espathra is invincible the turn you play it. You can reuse this with Professor Terracinaire as well. And Glittering Eyes here does 70, and if Tulip is in your discard, it does 140 for 2 Psychic, which is pretty decent damage output. Keep in mind you will still damage yourself with Accelerating Energy with the Gardevoir, and you are immune to... Oh, you are immune to effects of attacks, which is really useful. So if your opponent does have like Sableye or Giratina VSTAR or Roaring Moon EX or something like that, then you are immune to those. Outside of that, you do have the Screamtail as another attacking option, but the main attacker here is Espathra. You do have Mew EX as an attacker as well, which is actually pretty decent as it can be useful to copy a lot of different attacks, including Radiant Greninja, but some other ones as well. And for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward deck, but you do just want to attack with Espathra. Because it's invincible, you have the Tulips as well. You have to make sure that they're in the discard. You can loop Professor Terracinaire, and you got some really cool options. Lastly, this is a deck I might cover in a video. I don't know how good it is. This one won, I think it was an online tournament now, and it's an Incineroar EX deck. And the reason that I wanted to highlight this is because Incineroar is really fun. Incineroar EX has its ability that says attacks used by this Pokemon cost 1 colorless less for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. That didn't work. There we go. Limitless was having some issues there. So this can allow you to use TMs cheaper. That is not super useful, but it is an option. But your attack here, Blaze Blast, will do 240 plus burn, so essentially 260, potentially 280 if you get a little lucky and stuff goes your way. And this can be used for potentially only 1 fire if your opponent has 4 bench Pokemon, 4 or more. And that's really, really cheap. Same thing with Radiant Charizard, but that's for prizes your opponent's taken. But then you have Relicanth, which lets you copy previous evolutions attacks. Most notably, you can copy Litten, which does 20 for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So 240 obviously will one-shot some things, or 260, but then it won't one-shot everything. You have Choice Belt to get a little more, and you have a few things, but for the most part, you're not one-shotting everything. But if your opponent is, say, playing... I was gonna say, I guess I'll say Arceus V-Star. Let's say they're playing Gardevoir EX. They hit you with their Gardevoir EX. They hit you for 190. Then you can go ahead, double down on that, hit them for 380, copying Reprisal. No, Reprisal. There we go. And then Torracant also has its attack here, Gritty Claws, or Combustion, but that's not very good. Gritty Claws here during your opponent's next turn. If this Pokemon is full HP and would be knocked out by damage from an attack, it is not knocked out when its remaining HP becomes 10, giving you a bit more survivability. Obviously, you need to be at full HP and your opponent's one-shotting you, so potentially against a deck like Chien-Pao. But then we also see that you can copy Lin's attack here, and then you can go and hit absurd amounts of damage. Generally, Gritty Claws isn't an amazing option, especially because if you rare candy from Lin to Incineroar, then you go and just get to hit. Then you just skip the Torracat. You do still have access to Lin's attack, and that's okay. Also, this list does run Mela, which accelerates your fire energy, and Rabsca. Rabsca, spherical shield, prevent all damage from and effects of your opponent's attacks done to your bench Pokemon, which is really useful. You do have an attack, but you can't use it. But obviously, this is really nice because it allows you to. It's like Manaphy plus Jirachi plus some other stuff, and will stop a wide variety of things. I have not seen Rabsca pop up much at all, but I think it's pretty neat. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. I'm working on some really big projects, and I hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.